Hey, what's going on, guys? I was gonna say happy Friday. It's not even close yet. Uh, we're often doing this type of stream or something like this on a Friday, it feels like, but today's Tuesday, and today we're gonna be taking a look at a few different works here from some lovely Patreon supporters. This is Gunpla Critique. So, how's it going, everyone? I know that one of the works we're going to be looking at here today is from Mafuyu, who's live there in the chat. So we'll probably take a look at that one first. We've got a couple more to look at then after that. But let's see what's going on here today. Not much. Working on some, well, not much. A lot, as usual. But I mean, working on a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Not anything one in particular thing, but always got stuff moving and shaking, but working on a couple videos and a couple of builds over here. So yeah, how's everybody else doing today? If this is your first time seeing this series, or you don't know what we're doing here in today's live stream, if you're seeing for the first time, then we're going to be taking a look at some works from some Patreon supporters that have submitted works. Either when we do these videos, they can either be a work in progress or a finished work. Either way, I'm just kind of here to give my critique that is in the artistic sense of like, here's what I like about it, here's where I think this could be done differently, or this would be a good idea, or here's something that could be improved upon. Just some constructive criticism and advice, sort of, basically for different stuff. So two of the works that we're going to be, well, one is a finished work. One is, I think it's finished or mostly finished. I'll double check an email. I believe it's finished. The other one's a work in progress. Mafuyu's one is a work in progress here for the Summer Plamo contest, which I believe you guys have. Today's the 19th and it's done on the 27th. So just over a week left to finish that one. So yeah. So good luck, Mafuyu, and everybody else who's working on your entries. I believe I've gotten a few so far, but not that many. Usually most of the entries for any contest, you know, like the bulk of the finished entries, I would say 80%, 80 to 90% probably, are all sent in like within the last 72 hours or so. Within the last few days is kind of when everybody sends in their entries. So we'll get some more probably next week. Or when would that be? I guess, yeah, this time next week, pretty much. It's when I'll expect to see a lot more. So anyway, I'm working on a bit of an entry of my own that I'm also under a time crunch on, but it's going pretty well. Pretty, not exactly on schedule, but actually I think is going so far pretty good. So I'm happy with that. I'll share more about my own work in progress at a later date, but for right now, yeah, let's take a look at Mafuyu's work. And as always, if you guys would like to join, oops, not that one, this one, here we go. I don't need to be big, let me small over here on the side. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, you can check the link in the video description down below if you want to submit works for future episodes, Gunpla Critique, or just if you just want to support, or if you want to join our Discord server as well. It's also something that you can get access to via Patreon, so check that out. But all right, so yeah, as I said, this is for Mafuyu's Summer Plamo contest, and I just want to say I appreciate that. So they sent in a few emails, kind of a few photos at a time over the course of a few emails. I very much appreciate that the text of the email was just added to in each one. It's not like it was like different text in each email. So like by the time I got like the fourth or fifth email, it was the same text from the first one, but just like added to and added to and added to. So basically it just means that when I'm referring, now that we're doing a live stream, when I'm referring back to the email, I can just refer to one email rather than having like to switch back and forth between different emails to just kind of refer back to what they gave me in terms of like text, like commentary for like what we're going to be looking at here in the photos. So I appreciate that. Anyway, so obviously this is a Gogg HG kit here, and as you can see, this is like early work in progress here on it, basically just kind of setting the scene, as it were. So it's going to be a Gogg at the beach here, but not in like the same scale. As you can see, it's in scale with this small 3D printed character figure, which what's the scale on that? It looks probably 1/20th, maybe maybe slightly larger, like 1/16th maybe, but I'm guessing around there, 1/20th, 1/16th, around that scale. I think there's another photo where you can actually see it in hand, and in hand it looks probably slightly larger than 1/20th, but not quite 1/12th. Somewhere in between there would be my guess. Anyway, so the scale is kind of it's different from what the Gogg originally was. Obviously, that it's 1/18.5. So there you go, slightly larger than 1/20th scale. So obviously, like playing with the scale, which I'm always a big fan of, especially for like themes like this, or when you're going for something like a little bit different, a little bit more kind of creative. Playing with the scale of these models is always fun. So I appreciate that. And then the scene here, just we'll see like some more development on this in some different photos. And it looks like maybe like once we get down to like the other photos, it looks like maybe the stance is at a bit more of an angle, which is what I would say, just like looking at the first photo, just like very early on in terms of just like kind of in this stage, you're basically just trying to figure out like the placement of everything and just kind of like how it's going to look. It's like very straight on, which I think like having the kit at a little bit of an angle would be a better idea, which looks like probably is what's going to be the case, I think, just based on this photo. So I think that's a good thing if that is the case. If not, just by the fact that I know this is still a work in progress, I would say definitely set it at a little bit of an angle, just to give it kind of a little bit nicer composition rather than just like straight, like perpendicular to the sea there, or I guess parallel to the sea level anyway. So otherwise, in terms of the placement, I mean, like that's what I would say on that. I think it's going to be kind of a nice fit there, and I wouldn't be too worried about like trying to keep the feet like within the base. If the kit like would kind of, because it's got like just a very kind of straight up and down stance at the moment, if it might look kind of a bit more natural, a bit more kind of just like a natural setting and kind of like visually interesting to have the legs a bit more spread apart and like a little bit kind of bent a little bit more. I know you want the character like to be standing up and down, but I feel like the legs, rather than just being like kind of straight like that, could be like a little bit wider and a little bit bent a little bit, just to kind of make it look a bit more natural. And if that means a little tiny bit of the toe of the Gogg like sticking off the edge of the base, I think is fine, because you're not confined. And a lot of times I think works like this look better when they kind of break the boundary of the base a little bit. It just kind of makes it a bit more visually interesting, actually, kind of when they do that. And obviously the arms are already going to be kind of hanging off the side of the base anyway, so wouldn't be too worried about trying to keep everything like contained within the square of the base there. Going a little bit out would be good. But other than that, like the placement of everything is nice. You got what looks to be, I don't think you mentioned this in the email, but I'm guessing that's supposed to be like a towel, with this being at the beach scene there, and she's taking off her cardigan or whatever. And maybe that's just like a beach towel on the side. That's a nice touch. I like that. So that'll be cool, especially to see that once it's all painted. Like hopefully that'll be painted in like some bright like beach towel colors, some kind of like floral pattern or something like that. I think would look really nice. It's her uniform pants. Oh, okay. So it's meant to be pants. A towel could be a good idea though too. So maybe on the other side, if you end up having time to do that, but it sounds like it might be maybe not. Maybe won't have time for that, but it wouldn't necessarily be too difficult of a thing to add, and something you could also add later to like after the contest is done, like if you wanted to add something because you just don't really have time to do it now. Basically just making that same kind of thing out of putty, and just that can be set on the top of there. So anyway, as far as the inside is where a lot of the work's been going on the inside of the Gogg here, to basically make it look like padding. And I thought this was interesting. I'm curious to see how it's going to turn out, because I think a lot of time, as far as I know, I think there's basically kind of two ways to go about doing padding like this. One would be like this, where you basically kind of use your putty to make the shape, and then you like carve out basically like the seams between the pads, right? Another way would be just to make each segment of the pad like an individual piece. Like just basically make like little square pieces of putty that will all fit together. Then they're like much more like kind of defined. So it just kind of depends on how you want the padding to look, I guess, maybe. But that might have been another way to go about this. But as far as just like you can see, just having to do a lot of filling and sanding of putty on the inside of these parts, it's going to take a while. And so they mentioned in the email about that. Let's see. That the leftover bits and scratches of the padding will be made to look as damage to the padding. So where in like sections where it looks, I'm not sure if this is like the best photo example for exactly, well, maybe this one here, where maybe it looks a bit rough there, that's going to be painted in a way to look like it's actual damage to the padding. So I'm not sure if that's like, if that was the original intent, or just like the situation. I could imagine like for myself, like I was making this and like after, you know, doing the putty work and like the grinding out of the details there, and then like primer, and like it's not quite smooth, so I try to go in and smooth it and add more putty or add more primer and do more sanding. And after a couple rounds of that, I would feel like I'm just kind of tired of doing it, and like we'll just weather it and make it look weathered. Or whether it was planned, I don't know. Either way, as long as it looks good in the end is all that matters. So that should be fine. But I really like the concept anyway. So I think this will be really interesting. I've seen this sort of thing done in, you know, in slightly different ways with different kits, but especially with like the Xeon One-Year War aquatic mobile suits, they kind of lend themselves particularly well to this type of build. I think I've seen one very similar to this, like with I think I've seen one with a high Gogg, and then I think I've also seen one like with a Zoc, not a Zoc, a Zogok, I think, or something like that. Anyway, so it's definitely something that I would like to try myself at some point. Then you can see, other than that, like on the kit, the rest of the kit, aside from the torso and like the padding here, kind of added in between the hip joints, it's just like a lot of seam line removal. It looks like maybe that there was a bit of work done here in the thigh to basically make the thighs a bit thicker. Let me bring this over here. So there you go. You guys can see that, right? Yeah. To make the thighs a bit thicker there, which looks good. Other than that, yeah, just seam lines and stuff. So it's an older HG kit, but still holds up really quite well, I think. It's just as far as the kit goes. And then, so I mean, I think that's all looking fine. And then you have, as it goes with any like a character model kit like this, it usually takes more than once anyway, to, you know, you just do your priming, and then you'll have to go back and do some more sanding, and then priming again. And yeah, it just takes a few rounds of primer and sanding. So it looks like that, there's been a lot of that going on with this particular build, which takes time. So I understand that. But like I said, I like the concept. I'm not sure if we've seen in any of these photos exactly what it's going to look like for like the front piece, which is going to be like in front of the character. So I'm kind of curious, this piece here, kind of how that's going to be positioned exactly. My sense is that it's going to be like down, let's see, like at an angle, like in front of the character, but obviously you want to put it in, you want the characters to be the main focus, and so you want to put it not so that it's blocking the view of the character, so it needs to be like down low enough, but not like looking too unnatural or something. So I'm anxious to see how that's going to look. And I know Mafiu has been sharing a lot of photos of this in our Discord server as well, so there already might have been a photo showing that, but maybe it's just not in here that I've missed. Okay, so in the thigh there, that's not that the thigh is made wider, it's just that that's filled in a panel line. I guess I don't remember the kit well enough, but I'm guessing, yeah, that maybe that was one of those times where Bandai just makes a panel line there where the seam line is. Either that or it's the seam line on the side of the leg. Anyway, just filled in the panel line there. Okay. And lastly, on the water. So the water effect is done here. He said, let's see, what was it exactly? So It's done with just UV resin and then using different amounts of blue ink to give the illusion of depth, which you can see like more in this photo. So this is adding this layer on to give like the wave effects on the water, and then later once that's dried, it kind of dries mostly clear like this. And I think the lapping wave effect there looks pretty good. Like the shape of that overall, I think looks pretty nice. I'm not sure about the scale, just because you've like altered the scale. I think that like the wave pattern looks very close for this scale, but it's not like the main focus of it. So I think like basically, does it still look like convincing water? I think the water still looks good, which is like the main thing. You know, all things considered, realistically, I think it's like too many waves within that small distance for something that's meant to be represented at like basically 1/20 scale essentially. But like I said, it's not like a main thing to really focus too much on. And yeah, the color variation going from a lighter to a darker blue works really well to convey the change of depth. And you can see just from the base, we saw the photo, like the first photo, that the base is ground down to make the slope already there naturally. So I mean, it's going to be darker, but if you don't use this like different coloration there to the clear resin, it's not going to be like as noticeable a difference. And so again, like especially at the scale, I think that's a good use of the different darker shades of blue to show the deeper water. And then here, some more was painted onto kind of like sort of highlight in a way. It's the edges, kind of, what are those called? The what's that called? The break. It's not the breakwater anyway, but like the top of the waves. Is that breakwater? Anyway, yeah, the top of the waves, which I think looks good. Yeah. Like I said, I'm not sure if it's exactly the right like for the scale, but it's a small concern. Obviously, I can imagine that this black paint is going to be touched up again on there, which will look nicer, and then also clear crest. Yeah, crest of the wave. Sure, there you go. That works. And that clear color was used on the side to, you know, just help to give it that watery look. One thing I would also say about here, the sand, is that it looks good. Oh, stop moving like that. Here we go. It looks good, except for this part here, like on the side. So you can see like this was made with, I mean, whatever kind of medium mixed with paint to give it like that thick sort of wavy sort of sand look, which I think looks pretty good. Yeah, except for this part here. So you have like all the brush strokes going this way, and then the one on the side going that way, because that's like the side of the diorama. And then a little bit, not quite as noticeable on the opposite side. There's a little bit of that too, where it's kind of like the brush strokes kind of got to the end, and then instead of just like continuing on naturally, it looks a bit unnatural there along the sides, and this side too. But maybe this is just as a base, and then there's going to be like actual sand, you know, added, which I think would be a good way to go about this. That would hide some of this that I'm talking about, and then all this, obviously, like using real sand would look natural, would look pretty good. So that would also allow you to have the feet look like they're somewhat sunken in, because if you're planning on to, like at the moment, just like setting the mobile suit just right down onto there. I mean, I know it's not a massive 18-meter tall mobile suit. It's much smaller, but still it's going to be sunken in the sand a little bit. So you need to have the feet actually. So I'm guessing this is just going to be like something, the type of thing that you do like much later on. Once the painting's done, then you can set it in, then you can kind of finish the diorama around the feet, basically. There should be hidden under the feet. Once it's placed, I'll give it another coat of sand. Yeah, so yeah, like I said, I'm imagining that sand part is just not done yet, just because that you have to finish that once you actually set the mobile suit in there, at least the feet. So like what you might see like a lot of diorama artists do is they'll just have the feet separated from like the main kit, so that they can just put the feet in, like finish the diorama around the feet, and then like the rest of the mobile suit basically just plugs into the feet essentially. So you could do something like that. Either way, yeah, it's just the base there. Okay. But yeah, I think otherwise I like the pattern of that like the texture of that mostly, but and I think that it looks pretty good like that. But if you can find, so it just kind of depends on like the sand that you use for that. But if you can find like really fine sand, I think would look pretty nice for this. You don't want to use sand that would be like too large grit, basically, because then it would look unrealistic again, like for the scale, it'd be too big. The whole movable suit is one part and all cemented and putty. Well, that's fine. Yeah, you mean you don't necessarily have to separate the feet. Just saying, like, it's one way to go about making that kind of diorama, one way to separate the feet from the mobile suit. But if it's all one piece, then it's all good. It's fine. The process still works the same way. What I've found when I've done that, though, is that it's kind of hard to work on the effects between the feet when you have the rest of the kit kind of in the way. So you're kind of like having to squeeze between like the legs to try to get stuff in there where you want it to go, and it can be a little bit more tricky to work around. But anyway, yeah, I think it's all looking good. I'm curious about like the colors of what everything's going to be painted. I mean, I won't I don't know, try to guess or try to like give what I think would look good. I'm confident that it will be something interesting, and considering this is for the contest, and considering that we'll probably see the finished work of this in next month's Gunpla critique live stream, we can talk more about like the colors and everything, and kind of like the final results of this later when we see it all done. But I think it's looking pretty good so far. I like the concept. I like how it's all kind of shaping up, so it should be very, very unique and interesting. All right, I think that's just about everything for that. Let me just double check the email if there was anything else kind of that I really missed, but I think that should just about cover it. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that you could do with like the finish of the mobile suit, whether you want to have it like looking like, you know, essentially very similar as to how it would as like just a regular mobile suit, but just in a different scale. Or I mean, you could make it look a lot different in terms of just like the coloration and the weathering on it. Having like stickers stuck on it, looking as if it were something, you know, because essentially it's now, rather than a mobile suit, it's more sort of, well, it's still a mobile suit, but something more akin to like a moped or something, right? Or like a Mechatrowigo. So it would be probably really useful to like for ideas, reference to look at a lot of works, like small diorama works and stuff of like Mechatrowigo stuff, which is, what's the scale? The smaller kits are 1/35 scale and the larger ones are 1/20 scale. So yeah, anyway, looking at those for ideas as basically like kind of a smaller mobile suit that's more something just like for fun and transportation rather than like a weapon of war, and just kind of how they might have like sticker, like sort of like a bumper sticker, right? Stickers on there, or like racing stickers or something, or like some graffiti, like some things like written on them, some different ideas like that. There's a lot that you could do, that kind of depending on how ultimately how you wanted it to look. So yeah, all right. Thank you, Mafuyu, as always, for sharing that. It's looking very good so far, and I'm looking forward to it. Okay, let's see. Up next, we're going to take a look at Edgar's Charmander here. There it is. So this is the PokéPla Quick model kit, which I've worked on a couple of, and I can Edgar shared how difficult this was, and I can attest to that as well. They're more difficult than you might imagine, considering the complexity and the size of them. They're small kits, and like this kit, I don't know how many pieces this is offhand. I think it's probably like 2 pieces for the claws, probably 1 piece for the eyes, a couple pieces for the body. I don't know, it's like 10 parts maybe, or less. But they can be a real challenge to work on because it's just a lot of seam line removal, and it's basically just you can't at least I've found that just, you know, normally on like Gundam kits, you know, you can put your glue in there and give it a good press, and you know, hopefully most of the time, like 90% of the line and 90% of the time, you know, you get like a good seal between the parts. You don't have to do any additional putty or glue or something on top of that. Usually just, you know, one go at it with the glue, and then filing and sanding that down works pretty well. But with these, it did not work very well on hardly anything, and like you had to like kind of go over everything with like some adding more putty and glue and stuff onto the seam line, and then that kind of it took a couple rounds of the seam line removal process in order to get like a pretty good finish on these. So yeah, they're a bit more challenging than you might think, and then you have to worry about masking depending on how you're planning on painting the kit, because yeah, the eyes are a separate piece, but they're locked in there. So you either have to like modify it in some way to have those removable, or it's just a matter of masking them. So I mean, not the most difficult thing. That I think like the seam line removal is probably the most difficult aspect of these, but they are challenging somewhat for just being so small and simple. But I think this came out looking really, really good. It looks fantastic. And even you have like the metallic colors here for the tail, which I think was a good bet. I don't know what else might be a good way. It is a clear part. So using like a mixture, I'm not sure what would look good. Using like some fluorescent colors on there, but I'm guessing that part of the reason why I used metallics was because there's also a seam line on that part as well, I believe. Well, I could be wrong. I'm not sure if there's a seam line on that part or not, but if there's a seam and then like he was trying to remove the seam line on it, and yeah, that would kind of make it a little bit hard to preserve like the clarity of the parts. You could do it, but instead of doing that, you have to just use metallic colors, which I think looks good as a good option. The other thing is he mentioned that he did also do some pre-shading on the parts. I was going to say on the orange, it's kind of all orange, but some pre-shading on there, and he mentioned in his email that he wasn't sure how well that came through, but I actually think it looks really nice. It's subtle, but you can definitely tell the pre-shading is there. I think for something like this, rather than pre-shading something that probably would have worked better or similar, I don't know, just kind of depends, especially like with this orangish color too, rather than pre-shading, just doing highlighting. So just the effect is essentially the same, but just kind of the process is a little different. Rather than spraying like your dark color like kind of around the edges and then the base color on top of that, you just do your base color and then like a little bit lighter color around like to highlight some of like the open areas. Matthew confirming for us, yeah, that the flame is 2 parts, not a single part. Okay, yeah. So, but anyway, I think the pre-shading came out really good. So I probably would have opted to just do highlighting instead, but I mean, either way, like I said, the result that you're going for is basically the same like this, and I think it turned out looking really, really nice. One thing that I maybe would have been cool to see is like the toenails sharpened so they're not like flat on the bottom, so they look kind of a bit more like natural, like round nails there. It's a small thing, but like it's something I probably would have opted to do if it was me. But then I guess the problem with that is then I'm not sure exactly. It's kind of hard to tell exactly how that part is molded. But like if you were to round the bottom of that, then the orange part wouldn't fit right, and then you'd have to fill the gap, and it would be like a lot of work. So maybe I would have tried to like round it a little bit without creating too much of a gap right there. You know what I mean? Between the toes. But otherwise, I mean, I think it looks great. Now you've just got to do Squirtle and Bulbasaur to complete the set. And then, I mean, if you're going to do that, then you might as well do a Pikachu too. And yeah, the kits are really fun though. I mean, I like the kits. They take a lot of work, but I would like to make some more in the future. They're really nice. And I think like make for really nice gifts and stuff. So I made that one as a Christmas tree ornament, the Squirtle Squad one I made this past Christmas, right? As now it's sort of like an annual event thing to always make like a Christmas tree ornament plastic model. And yeah, it was the Squirrel Squad Squirtle. But yeah, they make fun little projects like that. Take a lot of work for a short fun project. And you would think it's something that you could like knock out in a day. You could, but like if you really want it to look this good, it's going to take a little bit more just because of the seam line removal process mostly. But looks fantastic. I like it a lot. Yeah, looks very good. The blue I think is a little bit dark. I I'd have to look like at a reference photo, maybe like what's like the official color scheme of Charmander. I also think for that matter, like as far as like the official colors go, this middle section is probably also a little bit darker than what normally. It also kind of depends on which official art you're looking at. Because if you were looking at like art like from like Gen 1, like 1995 or 6, 7, whatever, and then like if you looked at like art from like a game 2 years ago, the colors are always going to be like a little bit different. But yeah, I think it looks really good. The blue I maybe would have liked if it's like a slightly lighter blue. But anyway, I mean, that's just nitpicking small things about it, and I think it's really cool. So yeah, very awesome, Edgar. If you end up doing more, which I think, like I said, you're probably going to have to at this point, I would look forward to seeing some more of those in the future. I always love seeing people work on those, just because I don't know, like maybe it's just like being in the Gunpla world, you don't see a lot of people working on those model kits too often. We did have our PokéPla contest not too long ago. So anyway, all right, let's see. And then our third and final one we're going to be taking a look at here for today is from Joel. This was the one that I was not sure if it's finished or not. I guess for that matter, I'm not sure if the Charmander is finished. I know the kit, I believe, is finished, but I don't know how it's ultimately going to be like displayed, if it's going to be added to like a display base or something like that. I think that's another idea, just kind of going back to the Charmander for a second. I think it would be cool to see it on some sort of base or something, just like a little, kind of, if it was me, a simple little like wood block base there for it, something like that. But I don't know, there's a lot of options. Like a nice like, round wood plinth, I think would also look kind of nice. Okay, so this is Zaku. Yes, let's take a look at the email. Well, I'll take a look at the email while you guys are taking a look at the kit here for a moment. So this is the MG. As you can tell, there's definitely some different stuff going on here for this. So it is a work in progress. Okay, so it's not finished yet. Still undecided the direction I'm going with the base. I'm just going to scrap it. Or if I'm going to scrap the action base and do a wooden plinth with a brass rod, the classic. But let's see. Also planning on doing some light weathering on the suit. I was hoping to get some ideas on what products you would use and what areas I should focus on. Weathering isn't my strong suit, but following your advice, really trying to push myself out of my comfort zone. Let's see. He also attempted to put an LED in the mono eye. It's one of those Bit Trade 1 kits with a magic sensor. I just seen something about those LED kits, the Bit Trade 1, on Twitter like earlier today, and that's the first time I've ever seen those, and now I'm seeing something about them for the second time today in the same day. So something I'll have to look into. I don't know where they're from. Are they like from I don't know, the other place that I saw it was a Japanese modeler on Twitter. So I don't know if it's like a thing that like they're being sold like in Daiso or something in Japan or something like that. But just like these little single LED connected to like a little battery thing, and then it's just it's one of those magnet touch on-off system things. So perfect for just adding in a single LED and for like a Zaku mono eye or something like that. Perfect for that. I think it was actually Itami Tech on Twitter was who had used one in a Isaac HG kit that he was sharing. Yeah, that I was looking at. Yeah, just like an hour ago. Anyway, he said, all right, I think that was just about it as far as like the commentary on this one. But yeah, let's take a closer look. So far, I mean, just I think number one, the colors look really cool. I do really like the colors, kind of this like two-tone, kind of orangish red they've got going on. Also these added details of like the bolt details here and there, and then what looks to be like some like custom scribing on here, it looks like. That looks really nice. I'm not sure what the grenades and stuff are from, because I don't remember any kit that comes with those. Oh, unless those are from an old. Actually, yeah, aren't some like don't some of like the old 1.0 MG Zaku kits have those actually? Or there's some, and so this is the 2.0 that's used for this, but I believe, yeah, I think these like grenade parts are from one of the 1.0 Zaku kits or something, like the 1.0 Zaku 1 or something like that has those. I don't recall exactly, but something along those lines. And so I'm not sure if this is meant to be like Garma's Zaku 2, even though it's pretty much like Garma Zabi like color scheme. It's a little bit like tweaked, but I'm that's what I'm guessing this is supposed to be, maybe. Whether it is or isn't, kind of doesn't really matter. But being in this kind of like orangish brown with the green torso, it's like Garma Zabi colors, but I don't think that it's usually not like quite this orange, and then the tubing I don't think is usually yellow, as far as I can remember. But anyway, whether it is or isn't, like I said, I like the color scheme for this. It's very similar to the Garma Zabi color scheme, slightly tweaked a little bit. Let's see, where's a good photo of that? The tips of the grenades being in this very bright fluorescent red, I think is a bit too bright. It looks a bit odd compared with the rest of the design, because you got like the colors in like this kind of like brownish reddish orange. It's like a kind of funky color with like the yellow tubing, so you already kind of got like this like bright sort of somewhat colorful color scheme going on. So like I can see why in theory like a really bright red for those might make sense. It's a little too bright, I would say. Like a little bit too fluorescent, looks kind of a bit out of place. It could just be like the lighting of this. Maybe they're not actually really that bright, but just like the way that it's lit. But it does look like a pretty fluorescent red on there. So I think you could go for like a bright red color, but that's not quite so fluorescent for those. Because even like you have like your kind of orange yellow, kind of like character yellow color here, which goes really well with this kind of orangish reddish brown color there. But that one color there does clash a bit for me. Other than that, I really like the colors on this, the details, and this another thing that leads me to think that I think this is supposed to be Garma's Zaku 2 is that Garma's Zaku 2 has these has the Vulcans on the top of the head. So I think this is the P Bandai kit is what's used for the base of this. Then you have like these round bits added to the side of the elbows. Those are definitely added on, and then like these parts here added on for holding the grenades onto the side of the shield as well. Those look a lot, or they just, I wonder if they are, but they really remind me of like the little parts that are for like these kits here. For like the Kaviko kits, you guys have seen here on my channel that I've shown a number of times. Like they come on like these little runners in here, and you have like these pieces that like hold the runners together inside there. That really looks like that sort of. So I wonder if those are parts from. Sorry, banging my desk here. Really wonder if those are parts from a Kaviko kit. But yeah, even like having the little gray on the inside here, and then the metallic inside there for the Vulcans, and it's really nice detail in there. These little bits of yellow on the visible bit of frame here on the modified shoulder pauldron over here on the side too. And I just like the modifications to the shoulder are nice, with the kind of cap parts on the sides, and then this part there on the top, sort of like a heat radiator or whatever kind of it's meant to be. Who knows? But you know, your imagination can go with kind of whatever feels right for that. And yeah, nice details added around here. The scribing and these circle bits are all nice. I can see a face on the side of here, which is going to be really hard to unsee looking at this. There are like eyes and like a kind of open fish mouth here. This kind of thing there on the head, sort of like a, I guess this part could also be the eyes if you had like very big eyes, but I think like the small eyes here, some sort of like weird sea creature head there. But yeah, anyway, I think it's looking really good. As far as basing it goes, you know, I'm a big fan of using the wood block bases, but I think just like the visual style of this, I think actually works quite well with the look of just the action base like that. So you could always still use the arm of the action base, and then you could connect the arm of the action base into a wood block, or into something other than just like the actual base plate doesn't need to be the action base plate. I mean, you could use something different for that and just use the connection arm of it. But I think that especially once it's like painted up really nicely and like add a couple decals or something on there, like realistically the Zaku is meant to look like it's either jumping or flying or whatever in space, floating, not that it's connected onto anything. So realistically kind of you would want to kind of hide the action base. But I think if you were to paint it up in a way that kind of, and then add decals and stuff that matches well with the mobile suit, it's not realistic in the sense, is because we're not supposed to imagine the Zaku being held on to this action base thing. But I think just as like a finished piece, I think it would look kind of nice. I think it would just kind of match the style of the suit as just a nice way to display the kit. So that's something to look into. And yeah, like I said, you could use the arm of the base, and then if you don't want to use the base plate part, you just have a wood block, because you could attach it like, let me see here, let me grab one real quick. And let's see. All right. Bear with me a moment. Let's see if we were. It's like if this is your wood block, this is a metal box, obviously. But if you just were to pretend this is your wood block, you don't have to have the base like plugged in on the top like this. You could have this part of the base plugged in like on the side, and you would want it like, I guess it would have to be so that it can be at an angle that might not be a good idea. Maybe this part on the top, and this part could be like on the side or something. I don't know. You could mess around with it, see like kind of what might work, but yeah, I don't know. You're not necessarily limited to plugging them onto the base in any particular way. Although, yeah, I don't know, just kind of the limitations of the arm, it might not really work that well for anything other than that. But I don't know, you could experiment with it. What do I even have in there? Oh yeah, it's been a while since I've opened the box. I kind of forgot what was in there for a second there. So yeah, anyway, where were we? Looking at this here. So other than that, as far as the weathering goes on it, yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about trying to weather it too much. And I mean, as it goes with weathering, I mean, whether you're a beginner or not, always just kind of always do very little at a time, because you can always build more. So just do a little bit and just kind of see how it looks, see how it's looking. And then if you think it needs a little bit more, then add a little bit more. But don't try to do kind of all the weathering in one step kind of thing, because weathering is all about just kind of building up layers of, small bits of damage at a time. Also, I mean, just whether like as far as like a filter or something like that, sort of like a wash over it, again, just like for the style of this, meant to look like this very like kind of clean, like crisp, colorful style. I don't think that doing like any kind of like an overall like filter is probably not something that you really would want to do on something like this, possibly, and it's something to think about. But assuming that that's not really like in the cards for this, you probably want to stick like to mostly just like some like streaking and chipping, sort of like basic like light weathering stuff like that. I would probably just stick to that, because you want it to look like bright and colorful, but also realistic, and like this is something that actually is a massive mechanical structure, so it can be clean and colorful, but there would still be signs of use in that. Like you would have like a little streaking here and there, a couple maybe little chips here and there, but just try to think about it realistically, like where would oil leak from, or like what parts might get chipped, where pieces would collide with one another. Like a lot of times on Zaku's in particular, you'll see like a lot of chipping done like on the front of the thigh here, where the skirt armor would hit the front of the thigh as it's walking or moving. As soon as the legs move, the skirt armor is just going to be colliding with the legs, with the thighs here. So that's a pretty common spot. I mean, like knees maybe, but that's just like if it's going to be kneeling, it might get scratches on the knees or something, or like if it's using the knees as like, to kick something or something in combat, which possibly. So just try to think about it like realistically, what's the story in your head? Like, okay, if you're going to add some chipping onto the head, well, what's the situation that put that chipping, those paint chips, what damaged the head in that way? And if you can't really think of anything that would make sense logically, then it's not really logical for the paint to be chipped there on the head. So, assuming you want to keep it like pretty realistic, you just kind of have to think about it in that way. Whereas like anything that's like around the outer edges, like here on the sides of the shield, where should we look? Like over here, if you wanted to add like chipping like around these, because you have to imagine like putting those grenades onto there and taking them off. Like if this is a part where metal is colliding a lot because you're adding either, whether this is the first time that's ever been used or not, kind of depends, but even on its first use, some paint would probably get chipped off here from just them installing these grenades there onto the side or something like that. I don't know. So you just kind of have to think about it. Scraped knee from kneeling is awesome storytelling. Yeah. So, I mean, just think about it in that way. What would kind of make sense anywhere around, like, assuming that these bolt details are supposed to be like, place where maintenance workers are going to be working on it. Like, say, if they have to take off an armor panel or something, especially like on the battlefield, or like, it's not in the factory anyway, then you might get like some chipping around some of these areas, or like oil dripping and staining from some of these areas where like the mobile suit's being worked on. So like right now, as we're seeing it, this is how it rolled out of the factory. Anything else that's done on it after that is probably not going to be, it's probably not going to be kept so clean and pristine and nice looking. There's just faces all over this thing, isn't it? And here you got some eyes with eyebrows on there too. So anyway, those are some ideas to think about for this. I think it's looking really cool so far. I'm a big fan of my Zaku variants, especially like MSV sort of style looking. And yeah, I really like the added details on this one. So it's looking really very cool. Definitely looking forward to seeing how this kind of wraps up, because it seems like kind of almost done. Like I said, like without reading the email, if you just would have told me that this was done, I would have said very cool. But I'm looking forward to seeing like how this ends up getting finished. I know it's like pretty much done, and I mentioned about like the red color on the tips up here. I know that's kind of already done too. And then you might, and like even you got like decals up there as well, so you might not want to redo that, but I would consider it. I don't think it probably wouldn't be too difficult to just repaint those parts and just sand that down a little bit, say bye-bye to the decals and just repaint that just in like not quite so fluorescent a red color. Something to think about, but otherwise nothing really that I would change as far as how it is now. It's just kind of how you're gonna like do that last 5 to 10% finish work on this, getting it mounted up on a base and doing any kind of weathering that you want to do on it. But I think it looks really good so far. So, and it's almost done. So, all right, I think that's about it. There's a lot to like there, and thanks for sharing. And that's it for today's episode, guys. Just those 3 main kits that we were going to look at. And yeah, if you're interested in submitting works for future episodes, as I said at the start, this is something that I offer kind of it's a way to give back a little bit to my Patreon supporters. So if you want to join up on Patreon, you also get access to the Discord server as well. You can check that out. The link's down there. And again, thanks to everybody there in Discord and on Patreon. Thanks everybody for your support. When's the new video go up, Birdie? So I've got a video that'll go up later in the evening. And every day after that. So lots of stuff that I'm working on. But yeah, I am working on my own work in progress as well. So I'm gonna maybe go back to work on that for the rest of today. And I'll see you guys for the next live stream anyway. Will be TBD. I'm not certain on that either. I'm not sure what the next live build might be. Perhaps one of the HG G-Quox kits, because so far I've still only built the G-Quox, but I did finally get in the Zaku and the Gogg. So maybe we'll do like a double live build, maybe of those two kits, maybe towards the end of the week or something. We'll see kind of how it's going. But thank you guys all for coming and hanging out here today. Definitely appreciate your all support. And I'll see you next time. Bye.